Hey you guys, I'm just wearing a lot of stripes today. I just realized that sometimes the clothing is not always great on video. So I apologize. We've kind of a new setup in my makeshift office as COVID continues to keep my husband working from home and taking over the office. So I have a different office and there's all kinds of crazy things, but I think we've got a setup that'll work if we figure out my kids are schooling from home again. And there's a random wedding picture in the back when I used to be blonde. So anyway, I am excited to talk to you guys about this. This is something, even as I figured out what I wanted to do, that I wanted to go into coaching, years ago, I would get a lot of people asking me questions about this. And so it's something I've become really passionate about when it comes to talking to your kids about food and about their bodies, as far as like being a certain size, or if I should talk to my child if I feel like they're heavier than they should be. And I will be honest, my camp, I guess you could say, on this has changed a lot over the years. If you ask some of the people that I know, they will say, oh shoot, I just had somebody ping because they wanted to get access to my video. So hang on just 1 second. Let me see if I can get them in. Nope, I think she'll just have to watch it after. Anyway, so sorry about that. So, I used to be someone who would, really argue with my kids, like, you have to eat these foods. And I would really go, like, you will eat all the foods. And I've changed a lot over the years as I've realized that I don't want meal times or eating to be an area of arguing with my children. Now, just for frame of reference, my kids are 12. I have two 12-year-olds. They're twins, and then they're boys, and then I have a 9-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl. But I have clients and friends that have children of all different ages, so this is something I talk to them about a lot when it comes to what should I talk to my kids about, what shouldn't I? And I think this is something that has evolved over a lot of years too, when it comes to what was okay, what we thought was okay, 10 years ago versus really what we're finding wasn't a healthy way to think about things. So this can really be addressed in a lot of different ways, and I'm going to talk about one area, and then I think next week I'm going to talk more about addressing, the influences of outside society, so diet culture, and how do you handle that, because you send your kids off into school or into other areas where their friends or the messages they see you don't have control over. So this is more, today I'm just going to talk about like your influence with your kids, so what you can control, how you can approach them. And like I said, it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's really a lot I could talk about. So if there's other areas you want me to address, please let me know, and I can do another Facebook Live or even get on a call with you. This is, especially if it's something really specific to your situation, I would love to do just a quick mini session and really talk through any issues that you think you have or really want to talk through specific to your family's situation. So, so basically, I broke this down into 4 key parts, and feel free to take what you think works for you, but I really feel like they're all pretty important. So hopefully they will resonate with you. So the first things first, and I learned this the hard way, if you're trying to talk to your children about their bodies and about food and that they need to love their bodies and accept their bodies, but you have your own struggles, it is very hard. So my first recommendation always is do the work that you need to do on yourself first. If you're in the middle of working through this, and as most of us are, it is a multi-year process of really getting to a good place with your accepting your body and having a healthy relationship with food. Talk to your kids about it. Be honest. Tell them, the world wants them and you to believe things about your body that really aren't good for your body. And so these are the types of messages that I don't listen to. Tell them those things. Be honest. Have a conversation with them, because as soon as they can learn to recognize what social media is trying to tell them, maybe even their friends or ads are trying to tell them, they can recognize those things for what they are and just be like, oh, I don't believe that. And so now, when my kids will see an ad on TV, they'll be like, oh, that's just stupid stuff. Like, wait, why do we need to eat this random green powder for weight loss or something? So really just so talk to your kids and tell them that you're working on getting to a place where you can remember every day how awesome your body is and the things that it can do, and talk to them about what you want for them to know and believe about their bodies, and that you're trying to get to a place of that. because it's a process that we're all going through. And so I think it's good to normalize, the ups and downs of accepting your body and seeing that it changes. So one of the reasons why I wanted to do this work is I wanted my kids to understand what it meant to be a woman, a mom, and accept that my body changes when I hit my mid-30s, my late 30s, my early 40s. I've had 4 kids, and one of those pregnancies was a twin pregnancy. My body was not the same as it was when it was 25. So I don't want them to be angry about that. And so I want them to accept that and see that that is normal and that's okay, and that just see how I treat my body as something that they can do as well. So, really this idea is what I should say is the idea behind all of this is of working on yourself first is that, studies show that children really don't hear us. I know that sounds horrible, but I know what I'm not saying anything, I'm not saying anything shocking here probably. You're like, oh, my kids never listen to me. But what I mean is they watch us. They internalize what we're doing versus what we're saying. So you could be telling them all the time, you need to do this and act this way, but if you're not actually showing them that with your own example, they're not going to internalize it very well. And this fact is really what led me to realize that tracking and weighing and adding protein to my food and working out way too much and more really, was this the message that my kids were learning? And that's not what I wanted to pass on to them. And even though I was trying to be very careful about what I was actually saying to them, what was I doing in front of them? What was the message that I was giving to them? And so that's point number 1, do the work yourself. And that's honestly why I do this work as a coach. I love the idea of a mom being such ahead of her family and being able to pass down this message of accepting your body through different stages of life and loving your body and having a normal relationship with food. Because when a mom does that, she can then affect her family and her children, and that is powerful. And so when you have that feeling of like, I can do this, I can help, I can affect my family for good, then you really empower them and give them almost armor when they go out into the world, where diet culture and everything is telling them, no, change your body. You need to change to look like this ideal. So that's big number 1. And that's why I do this work. And that's why I recommend talking with me, having a session, seeing, where are you at, to really get a good idea of what's the work that I do need to do. So, like I said, I really felt like my words would be falling on deaf ears because of what I was doing, because really their eyes were watching me so close, even if they weren't really listening to what I was saying. So as I started on this journey to diet recovery and healing my relationship with food and my body, I had to evaluate the nonverbal message that I was sending, like I said. So I'm not saying, don't keep trying to talk to them about these things. Don't completely ignore that, but really make sure that what you're saying and what you're doing are very congruent. So honestly, it kind of boils down to eat the same foods as your kids. I mean, you don't have to eat mac and cheese if you don't want to, but don't make special meals for you. I need something special, that your kids don't. So try and eat the same meals as your children. Wear the bathing suit. Be in the pictures. Just little things like that. Show up in your life. Stop waiting to show up in your life until you feel like you're worthy or you're small enough or whatever. I know that sounds simple. It's not. I know, from years of my own work and working with clients, it's easier said than done, but it is. Sometimes you just do it and you realize it's not that hard to do, to show up, to be in the pictures, to be in the bathing suit on the beach, being with your kids. I have clients that are doing that work and they're seeing that, oh, my kids appreciate that. And you know what? That matters a lot more. I'm showing up in my life now and I'm passing that on to my kids. So like I said, it's not really a simple idea, but it's the basic idea of being present and having that example for your kids. So again, number 1, I kind of made that probably longer than it needed to do. But I removed phrases from my vocabulary like, I have this many macros left. I have this many calories left in my day. I had to really leave that out of what I said and what I did. So I would recommend, if this is something that you're currently doing, to take some baby steps. Maybe pick a meal that your kids are around and don't do that. Eat with them. Just show them that food is normal. Food doesn't need to be tracked. Maybe you're actively cutting out an entire category of food like carbs or high-fat foods or something because you feel like that's what you need to do. Take a baby step. Pick one meal. Just don't do it. Be an example for them right there. Model listening to your body for your kids. So again, big one, do the work yourself. I obviously do a lot of videos on that, so I'll move on to the next one. So number 2, again, this is still baby steps. What you want to do with your kids is drop the food morality. Drop the whole idea that there are good foods or bad foods. This is something I've talked about. Do it for yourself, but really do it for when you're around your kids as well. Talk about how food is food and all foods fit. Now, of course, if you've got allergies, and we've got some of those in my home, we don't push like you have to eat peanut butter. I don't really want to go to the ER with my daughter or my husband. So obviously, outside of allergies or food that causes obvious discomfort, whether like too much dairy or something, if somebody like notices those things in their body, but just say, food is food, and all foods that you want to try and eat, they can fit. So this helps just normalize what food is around your family. It's not a good or bad, because by then, that extension usually is, if I eat bad food, then I am bad. No, you ate food. You're just someone who ate food, because food does not have a moral value. It is not good or bad. So when it comes to this, my best advice is to focus on what food actually does in your body. Kind of a transition if you're working towards this. So teach your kids to pay attention to how food feels in their body. Treat it like an experiment with your kids. I wouldn't say like, "Ooh, watch what you eat. It's going to make you feel sick." That's not what I'm saying. But just pass on awareness and notice when they notice. So if they eat something like, "Oh, I'm so full. I don't feel good. I just want to sit here." Just be like, "Huh, what do you think that is?" Oh, and with children, it's amazing. They'll recognize either I ate too much of this thing, or they'll recognize maybe that food didn't make me feel great. And that kind of awareness in a child is huge, because a lot of times we get away from it, and that's unfortunate. So I want to give you like an idea of kind of what that looks like. I gave a really short class for some 8 to 11-year-olds within my church, little boys and girls in my church, and I really wanted to be careful, because I was asked to give this like, "Oh, hey, you're a health coach. Can you teach them about nutrition and good foods?" And like, ooh, how do I approach this as how I am and what I preach as a coach? And so what I did, and I think it was great, my son still talks about it all the time, was I broke it down to colors. Now this is elementary for your kids if you have older kids, but it never hurts. So for example, instead of saying, "Oh, apples are good for you," and they are good, they do great things in our body, you can just say, you know what red food does? It's good for your heart. Now that's not all red foods. I'm not saying like Twizzlers are good for your heart, but you can help categorize that a little bit for them, and it helps them think, "Ooh, I'm eating this, and that's gonna, orange foods will help me see in the dark." Instead of saying like, "Ooh, salad is healthy, you need to eat salad," you can just talk about how green foods help you fight sickness and germs. A lot of times, sometimes we moralize or demonize carbs, white breads. Ooh, one way is just to talk about like white food gives you energy, and how much energy do you need? Okay, well then let's have some of those white foods. When it's breads or things like that. So do you see the subtle difference? It's not good or bad. It's just, this is what happens in your body. Let's get a balance of everything and focus on how it feels. Can you feel it working in your body? So focus on the function and how we need all of them, and that they all have a purpose. And then just focus on how it feels when you do have that food or when you don't. And honestly, even though it is hard, sometimes the overeating of a particular food does way more for the learning for your child and for yourself than reading the textbook and just understanding that too much of this thing will have this reaction in my body. You have that experience and actually you're like, "Oh crap, that actually didn't make me feel good." You will internalize that. Remember, I have a limit on this amount of food. One of my twins, for some reason, has noticed if he has too much just regular milk, that his stomach hurts. And that happens with lots of people if they have a dairy sensitivity. He knows that he can have it with cereal. He can have yogurt, doesn't bother him. Like, he has paid attention, and so he'll say, like, "I don't like just to drink straight milk," which I'm not going to push him to do. It's fine. But he's done that through his own experimenting, and I haven't. I just was like, "Oh, you noticed that? That's fantastic." So, obviously I get a lot of people that say, "Well, how do we talk about treats or McDonald's French fries?" And I know those are really good questions, So our goal in not giving a moral value to food is to help you and your kids see food as neutral, like I said. So they aren't trying to wade through really mixed messages like this food is bad for me, but it tastes good. So, there's this pull of, but so am I bad because I want to eat this bad food, and so there's really that mixed message of, am I bad if I eat this food? So if food is food and has no moral value, no good or bad, your value does not change by the food that you choose to eat. And then you can just relax and listen to your body. You know what happens when you're listening without more messages to your body. Your body naturally balances its intake over time. It isn't in one sitting. So it's not like if you've restricted a particular treat or food for months and then you finally let yourself have it, it's not going to happen right then and there. You notice, oh, that entire bag of Cadbury mini eggs, I didn't love it. It didn't feel great. So it does take a little bit of time to normalize, but it happens, and it will happen in your kids. I can guarantee that. I've experimented with my kids over this summer. I'll tell you about that in a second. It's been really fun. So this brings me to number 3. So if you have been strict with your kids eating, it can feel really crazy to just allow them complete freedom. But that's the next thing I want to talk about, is just to allow them foods that maybe you wouldn't allow them to have in the past. And this baby steps, again, bring them into the food process and just experiment with them. So if there's a particular food I want you to think it's like you've maybe categorized it as bad in the past, try picking one. Like I recommend within my program, just pick one that like, ooh, that's a bad food that I just love. Get it. And I promise it is crazy amazing to watch your kids eat a ton of that thing that you've restricted, that they're super excited about, and then just naturally self-adjust. So experiment is number 3. Experiment with your kids, and one food at a time. I have so many clients and friends that say, oh, I can't trust myself around this food, whatever it is, a certain food, because, oh, I won't stop. That is fear. That is your fear talking, because you've never allowed yourself to get normalized around that food. It's always been a restricted food that you restrict, and then you crave it, and then you binge, and then you go back to restricting it because you don't think you can trust yourself. So if you actually allow yourself the time to just get used to that food being there, you will normalize your reaction around it. It's scientific. There's plenty of studies that show that. And then just try it on yourself. Try it with your children. That's the key, is just try it with your kids. So one thing I did it with Pop-Tarts this summer. I don't normally buy Pop-Tarts. It's just not something I think about. Sometimes I do. I tend to kind of see them as like a dessert or a snack, not like a breakfast food necessarily. But my kids always think, they kind of have this, ooh, Pop-Tarts are amazing feeling in their minds and their memory. And I'm like, okay. And so we have had Pop-Tarts this summer. And, I just let them eat them. I didn't say like, ooh, that's a bad, there was no discussion. It was more like, well, there's 4 of you and there's 8 packages. So you each get 2. Decide how you want to eat them and when you want to eat them, whatever. And like I said, I didn't say like, this is your breakfast necessarily. I like, what does it feel like to you? And they're like, oh, it's more of a snack. Okay, fine. Have it as a snack. And they knew that I would get them again. I talked about it. Oh, we'll get them again. Don't worry about it. And I can say they ate them really super fast in the beginning. It was like, woohoo, this is exciting. But you know what? It literally took like 2 days, maybe 2 times of getting Pop-Tarts. They suddenly don't care about the Pop-Tarts. They'll eat them like every once in a while, like, oh, I'll have them. But they don't really like them that much. And one of my sons said, oh, it actually gives me a headache if I have the Pop-Tarts. Do you want my Pop-Tart, Mom? I don't like them anymore. I don't know if he would have ever recognized that or said that if I had kept it as this, food that we never get. So for me, that was my kid learning to listen to his body. And it was awesome to see his awareness and his own intuition kick in. I love seeing that kind of stuff. Even sometimes it still kind of scares me to be like, ooh, what are they going to do if they suddenly decide, maybe this won't work, but it's never failed. It always works. Now I will say, like, it's not like they don't want some of the other things, like sugary cereals, for example. Again, I would never buy sugary cereals. We only had cereal once a week. I was very regimented about cereal intake for a lot of years. I still don't love them having a lot of sugary cereals in our house, but I just have relaxed a little bit and gone, just a kind of natural. I didn't go from nothing to everything. I just started to add them in, so it wasn't this this special day, Mom get a sugary cereal and lets us have it. We did that a little bit, and then it was more like, oh, if I buy cereal, it's on sale. I'll just say, oh, it was on sale, I got it, instead of making it like, this is the one time I will buy it. It'll never be here again. So with the sugary cereals, they go a little bit crazy when I first get one. But I get them enough now that they're like, oh, well, next time I'll get some. It's okay. The excitement has worn off. They like them, but oftentimes they just pick Cheerios on their own, saying like, oh yeah, it doesn't, I feel kind of sick if I eat too much of that. Or they'll have Cheerios and maybe like one bowl of normal food or something. And so, sometimes they still pick the sugary cereals. They still love them. And I've just learned to relax a little bit. And like I said, it's still a process. I still sometimes have that knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, it's the sugary cereals again. But I don't want it to be a point of like them seeing this as like this power struggle and, ooh, I want this all the time. If I relax, they relax around them, and they just pay attention to their bodies. And that's basically what happens. So experiment with your kids. As I've done my own work and I've seen how my own body trust is expanding, I've learned really not to project my own fears on my kids. And that's kind of where this one comes in. Like I said, their bodies will relax and trust them. And especially when they're a lot younger and they haven't had so many years of body image issues and going up and down and restricting, it's a lot faster for them than it is for someone my age who had years and years of counting and tracking and wanting to lose weight. So because I have little to no, I would think none, dieting history in my kids, it's really easy for them to just kind of normalize their relationship with food very quickly. So another way that you can experiment is letting them eat beyond the level of comfortable fullness. And they'll tell you like, oh, I feel sick. I ate too much. And then just ask them questions as you do this experiment so that they recognize what happened. Was that too big of a portion? Should we have started with a smaller portion? Was that too much food? Did you have a snack right before dinner? Oh, okay. So things that they just learn to recognize. And then sometimes it's just, was that specific food not a good fit for you? Did it not make you feel good? So let them practice figuring this out for themselves. Ask open-ended questions and let them say, oh, that was too much. Just even this week, I made what I think is just a delicious dulce de leche cheesecake. It's awesome. It's amazing. It's so tasty. And I made it, and we've had it like a little bit every night. I've had some because it was quite a big pan. And it's been interesting to watch my kids. It's rich, so it's not something that they want a ton of. At first, like, ooh, it's really good. But then they kind of noticed, oh, like, that was a little too much. I don't think I want that big of a piece. So then the next day they had less. And then I have one kid who doesn't do well with dairy, so she's like, I'm going to have 2 Oreos, Mom. Is that okay? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. And then, now last night, I'm still having it because I look forward to it all day. They didn't even have any. They're like, I'm okay. It's like, wow, that is my kids doing this work on their own, and it's beautiful. They don't have all the diet history that I have that they have to recover from. So, when you've allowed them to have more freedom with food, you will naturally transition into the number 4 of just letting them honor their hunger and fullness. And it's a concept that sounds simple, but letting your child not clean his or her plate, is challenging sometimes. I grew up with like, you will just eat the food that I give you. So it has taken a transition on my part and to not fight this. I used to fight it a lot. So now it's more, okay, I just start with smaller portions with some of my kids. I just know they're not as big of eaters. I have my kids that are 12 that are huge eaters most of the time. And so I tend to give them the same amount of food that I have. But my younger kids, I'm like, I just keep sometimes cutting back on their food because I notice they struggle and it's a fight towards the end. I'm like, maybe they just don't want to eat that much. And so maybe just start with smaller portions. And sometimes they go back for more. And sometimes one portion is just fine. And it's kind of fun to watch their appetite go up and down depending on how active they've been during the day or a growth spurt. And it's fun because we have this discussion of like, wow, you're really hungry today. Yeah. And be like, oh, maybe you're growing. And they get really excited about that. So just making it natural to have your appetite go up and down is just another point of awareness that I've noticed when I exercise a lot or I'm really active. I'm hungry the rest of the day. So again, just helping them honor their body, honor those hunger and fullness cues. So learning with your kids is just really a great way to see how your body is really supposed to function. And I think it motivates me to make sure that I am continuing to progress to, back to that place. Because we know that we were born innately with this desire, with this ability to notice what foods or how many foods or how much we needed to eat, and that we've lost it over time. And so it's great to watch them very quickly get back to that. So one other thing, just accept that snacking is normal. Help them see that, hey, did you not get enough for lunch? Is that why you're hungry? Maybe you just didn't get enough food that was, filling enough. Let's see if we can get you some food maybe with more protein or more fiber. But just notice that, sometimes snacking happens. Going back to that cereal example, I've noticed, and my kids have noticed, if they choose to eat cereal for breakfast, they'll eat like 3 bowls of cereal and then they're hungry in like an hour. So that's a good dialogue to have with them, to teach them about it. So, hey, if you want cereal, make sure you eat it with something that's going to stick for a little bit longer. Let's throw in a boiled egg. Let's throw in some yogurt or throw in a piece of fruit. And they learn like, oh, I know I get hungry. I don't want to be hungry right after, or I can't be hungry because I'm in school, so I'll eat something that will go with it. So it's just a great way to help them learn. So I hope you can just see that you can treat it as a learning experience with your kids, and for them and for you, and really just relax around food. So just to review, the 4 tips that I talk about is, number 1, do the work on yourself. You have issues with food, issues with your body. That's why I coach. The mom especially really will pass on their feelings about them food and about themselves to their kids just by how they're acting. And so recognize what you're doing and the work that you need to do, and talk to your kids about it too. That, hey, this is something I'm working on. And number 2, just try to baby step and, not talk about foods as good or bad. So take out the morality of food. Food is neutral. And then number 3, just to do an experiment with your kids. Allow them to feel like all foods can fit, and try and bring in a food that you normally restrict, and just see how they normalize. And then number 4 is to teach them and watch them honor their hunger and fullness cues. And overall, all of these things, it's all about having a dialogue with them. Make it normal to talk about food. Food is not good or bad. Food is just food. And food can have a lot of purpose and place in our life, and it can have a normal place in our life. So those are my tips on this. And like I said, I will talk more next week about diet culture and just outside influences that come to our kids, and kind of where we don't really have as much control. So what do you do to talk to your kids about what they hear outside of your relationship and the walls of your home? And that's another whole nother conversation. So I've already been talking for 30 minutes, so I'll end there, and let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything that you want to talk further about. As always, please DM me if you want to set up a quick free mini session. This is a good thing to talk about, to just work through what you want to bring to the table with your kids. And so I love to talk about this. Obviously, I'm pretty passionate about it as well. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk next week. Thanks.